you're in for a treat now. We have Karsten Hollasch, who's from Deloitte and who's been working with EuropeActive for how many years now?
More than 10 years.
I thought it was only 10 years old.
Yeah, but we did some other research before.
Prior.
Right.
Prior. So from Deloitte, so deep analytics into our sector. So we would love to start with, there's so much talk, we come from America, so we're hearing slightly different narrative. What's happening in Europe generally? Financial markets, fitness trends, post-pandemic, and you're dealing with other things, you're much closer to the war. You've definitely had energy issues more than we've felt in the US. So just give us a sort of a headlines of what's happening over here.
Sure, I think overall, when you look at the environment for, let's say, businesses overall and generally, it's getting tougher. As you just pointed out, I mean, energy costs are increasing. There are really severe supply chain issues around for companies. But you're also feeling lack of getting good people to work in companies as well. So we as Deloitte as well, we're looking for the best talent, of course, and people are increasingly hard to get really from the university, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a lot of things which are happening, and you mentioned briefly I wouldn't call it financial crisis. I mean, there were some obviously coming from the US, some topics like Silicon Valley Bank, but also in Switzerland, what happened there with the merger of two big banks. So that obviously is a kind of, I wouldn't call it turmoil, but it's kind of, uncertainty for financial institutions. And if businesses are financed, obviously, by banks, that would affect them by increasing interest rates. Inflation is also a big topic, especially on paying, let's say, more salaries to the employees. And as we know, the fitness industry was not always known for paying the best salaries to their employees. So, and that's hitting them as well. On the other side, what we have seen from a consumer perspective is that after obviously the pandemic hit us, most of the fitness studios are now coming back quite well. And I called it bounce back really, and we already see in some of the countries levels back to 2019 after the Corona pandemic with course then a lot of lockdown periods, etc. as well. So I think overall, from a consumer perspective, it's quite positive, and there are a lot of opportunities for the industry. The environment from a financial perspective, from a cost perspective, being personal cost, being cost for the real estate, it's getting more challenging, but overall I think the picture is not as dark as we thought 2 years ago when really Corona hit us and the clubs needed to shut down, etc.
That's great. And then how would you look at each of the sectors right now? I mean, we know Basic Fit, our friends, and the HVLP are sort of killing it right now. Has the bounce back been sort of equivalent across those different things, or are you seeing different things in the, say, low price versus the premium versus digital? Like, what are you seeing in that mix?
I think it was a transformation, and I mean, the transformation is always good for operators or also for corporates who do differentiate from others. So meaning, if you look not only at the fitness industry, but you can look at the supermarkets, you can look at the fashion industry, etc. And those who have a clear positioning, being at the low end for the discount or budget, whatever you call it, or being at the premium side, they have appreciated that. When you are kind of stuck in the middle, in the medium, you really have difficulties of differentiating yourself. And therefore, I think it's both at two ends, one, the discount or value for money operators have appreciated this, and also the premium operators, because there was clear differentiation and customers really are more mature, are more educated, and really have a wider offering now on hand, and therefore can decide whether they want to train in a discount or value for money operator, or if they can afford a premium operator. And the medium operators really have difficulties of positioning themselves towards the two ends. So I think if you are on this, either on this end or on the other side of things, then you are well positioned.
You referenced opportunities just a moment ago. Like, what are some of those opportunities that you're seeing, or things that we should be thinking about or looking at?
Yeah, I mean, opportunities, also the transformation brings more opportunities, and sometimes also the need for a wider thinking in the industry. So if I look back, and you said we are working now with EuropeActive for more than 10 years, I'm in this industry now for more than 24 years, actually looking for the German market. And what I've seen is that the industry was ever growing. It was ever growing, so there was always a tailwind, you know. And I'm a cyclist now, and I mean, with tailwind, you don't need to train that hard. You're going just easily, and you go there, yeah, right, and you have a speedy tempo, etc., etc. But now with the headwind, with pandemic, and also with the transformation coming from digitalization, people are now used to more offerings without paying for it. So I think we briefly touch base on the digital offering, which you get via YouTube, by all the channels, which is not paid for. So people are getting used to that, and you really have to cope with this high level of quality they can get. But I think also if operators do think about that actively and think about the next mile, they could take something out of that. And an opportunity I also showed is, for example, combine the classical club business, the classical train out in a studio, with some advice at home, yeah, a digital channel, but also some outdoor fitness. I mean, there were some operators who have taken on that a few years and provided some outdoor fitness, but let's focus on outdoor. The others, some home fitness, they were focused on home. Why not combining that and really prepare something for the consumer, which is a broad offering, and trying again then to differentiate themselves. I think that's an opportunity now with all the digitalization, which is more or less now in place, because also Corona, again, transformation, requested that the operators had certain digital tools to measure how many people are in the club, etc., etc. So that has forced the apps for the usage, etc., and you can use that better. And I think, long answer to your question, I think one big opportunity as well, I mean, we're talking about movement, we talk about fitness, but what about the nutrition side of things? Yeah, so combining that nutrition plus movement and finding the right partners. Yeah, so for example, here at the FIBO, we see Aldi presenting, and they have an own booth here. Aldi, I mean, the discount grocery retailer in Germany or worldwide. I mean, they are now going into fitness and have a combination between movement and nutrition for the consumers. I think it's a great opportunity as well.
Were there, in the research, were there any surprises? You've been in this space for 25 years and doing this for 10. In this year, was there anything that you thought was surprising or against how people thought the numbers would come out? Anything unexpected?
Sometimes really strikes me or surprises me is then that, I mean, as you said, I see a lot of opportunities which you can really improve yourself and get more out of that. But again, with the very positive environment for many years we have seen, people tend only to react rather than to be proactive. And that sometimes strikes me that they have these, let's say, big ships which are moving, and they don't tend to think outside the box sometimes and really get the big ship also to the small boats outside and test something. So we have learned a lot today about entrepreneurship, how we can accelerate and how we can do creation of new businesses, etc.
What would be some examples then, just to give me an example of that then, like of not thinking out?
Yeah, for example, when the clubs were locked down, so there were kind of fitness operators who have done fitness classes at home, so they have prepared content. Community was very important for them, so they have rented a studio and get some trainer instructors into the room and then present it to their members so they can download it or can view it live on YouTube. So that the content was packed, and that the reaction was partly very, very fast, but on the other side, others were just saying, okay, we need to close the clubs. What shall we do? We can't do anything. And that's, I think, not what I would have done if I were an operator.
It's interesting. So just tell us a little bit about the consumer survey, which you ran last January, and you've just rerun that. And you spoke this morning with Herman around 6 outtakes. So tell us about that. What were some of the key messages?
Yeah, I think, it's quite representative because we have surveyed in 19 countries, in total 11,000 people. So it's very interesting also to see the range of what people consider to be physically active. So we not have a very high bar for being physically active, meaning we train out once a week. That meaning, okay, I'm physically active. And that is a range between 40 and 70%, depending on the country you're looking at. And then obviously, if you look at the three main pillars for being active, it's being fitness club, it being outdoor, or it being home fitness, you see some tendency that especially the fitness club have bounced back, as I said, for new members and members again in the club after really the lockdown happened. And home fitness kind of stayed on the same level, and outdoor as well. So again, I think the combination of the three is very interesting. And to trigger a consumer, for example, there's a big tendency of combining home and outdoor fitness. But what can I do as an operator to attract those consumers who at the moment not in the club, but do home and outdoor together to get them into the club? So again, think outside the box, what can I provide to them, et cetera, et cetera. But this combination was, for me, was quite interesting. And now the operators should think about how they can really make something out of that.
Did anything surprise you in that research this year?
Well, not really surprised, but it was a kind of confirmation of we were discussing. So when I'm thinking back, I think it was 2 years ago, I was sitting in a panel with Martin Seibold and with the equipment industry, Technogym, and we were discussing, well, okay, we are all now in the digital world, clubs are closed, what's going to happen? Will they stay in the digital world or will they come back? And we all had the hypothesis, no, we think they will come back, but they will ask for more offering, not only the physical activity, but also the digital experience. So that's something which you need to add to your product portfolio as an operator. And I think that was a hypothesis because we didn't know what the future will bring, but that has been confirmed more or less. The good thing is that the fitness operators were able to convert, let's say, these increased offering also in higher prices. So that what we have seen now, when I know the numbers for Germany quite well, so that has increased to a price of more than 10%. So if you take the gross price for an average membership, it's 45 euros now in Germany. And that is obviously a good sign for the operators that they can monetize their digital offering because there are also expenses with those coming, and therefore they could put that also in the membership fees. And people really, and that was also a good sign from our consumer pulse survey, which we do from a Deloitte perspective in more than these 19 countries, or even in 24 countries. We ask about the fear in terms of inflation. And although people are fearing in most of the countries inflation still, and it's really matters to them, it is coming down a bit. And the good thing is that if we were asking people where you're going to save money because of this inflation effects, they wouldn't save it in the fitness clubs, which is good. And that was, again, many years back when Lehman happened, I can remember there was a big study coming out. Is fitness affected by this financial crisis? And we talked about banks, et cetera, et cetera. Certainly from that perspective, yes. But it hasn't affected consumer demand because people were even substituting, let's say, more expensive vacation by a yearly membership fee in a fitness club because they just tend to have something good, which was less costly, but obviously it led to a positive effect.
Yeah, it was considered valuable.
Yeah.
And that's still, from what you're saying, I saw it on the slide, then that confidence in fitness over other things still seems to be there.
Yeah, and there's a digital decision. Either you pay a membership fee or you don't. So you can obviously save some energy and put the heating down, or you can save some water by showering not on 15 minutes, but 5 minutes, et cetera, et cetera. But for fitness, it's just, do you have a membership or not? Yeah, so, and people tend to stay on, and that's also been enhanced by the fact that the fitness operators have increased their membership fees, but only for the new members in many cases. And existing members tend to train out at the lower membership fee. So they tend to have a lower attrition rate because of that fact, in addition to what I said before.
How is the investment community looking at things at the moment? Like, we had a chat, we've got John Canarick in the US and got a feel for where it was out there. Like, how are you seeing that in Europe then? Is there still, is there an extreme concern? Is there any optimism? Like, how would you describe that?
Yeah, that's quite an interesting question. I mean, first of all, if you look at the shareholders in the fitness industry in Europe, you will find partly some public listed companies, but also private equity owned companies. And if I can start with private equity owned, I mean, private equity still has a lot of money to be spent, so-called dry powder. And this dry powder is like, say, I don't have the European number, but I have the worldwide number. It's more than $2 trillion US dollar, which they need to spend in order to have certain ROIs for their investors, paying back after 10 or 15 years, depending on the contract they have. And this money is still to be spent. And obviously, there are some funds which need to realize money in the short term, but others tend to have more patience, et cetera, and therefore there might be some changes between the funds of those assets. But I still believe, again, with all the opportunities we have taken into consideration, have discussed before, that there is still some growth to come for the operators, and it's still a good investment. It could be a good investment for private equity. When you look at the public markets, I mean, how the public markets have evolved over time and how the valuations have evolved over time. So what the public markets always rate is grow. So if you take, for example, Basic Fit, it's a fast growing company, and that has always been appreciated by increasing share prices by the shareholders. So people tend to invest in those. Where you don't have that big of a grow, it's more a steady share price, and obviously being affected by Corona and by those external factors. But it's still a kind of good valuated business. So opportunities are there, both for growing the business if you're publicly listed, but also from a private equity perspective. So again, I think it is still a good investment. It could be a good investment, and money is there. So I don't see an end from that perspective.
Yeah, that's great. You're king of data. So on May the 16th, each year you do with EuropeActive, correct, a big report, a European report. So that's due to come, which I believe that you're delivering virtually with Herman, is that correct?
Correct.
And then after that, there will actually be, that report will be available, I think, on EuropeActive's website, correct?
Correct.
So just high level, what does that tell us? What will you be telling us on May the 16th?
Yeah, we have actually postponed that. I mean, we used to present it here at this forum, but obviously the countries were still looking for appropriate data, so especially in major countries where we do rely on. So for Germany, we have finished that exercise, so we do that with the University of Prevention and Health, plus the German Fitness Association. We presented the results a month ago, but that's an established process. On other countries where it hasn't been that established, we are still looking for proper data, and partly public listed companies like, for example, Pure Gym, will only publish in 2 weeks from now. So we wanted to wait for that in order to have all this information, and we rather have a report published months later with proper data than have it here with some assumptions. And that's the reason why, and I think it will be a good report again, and it has all the usual stuff around M&A activity last year. It has all the stuff around the major countries, the major operators, which we partly haven't showed 3 operators today, which we will present there, but also the main operators in the countries, et cetera. And I think, I wouldn't say, it's probably too arrogant to say it's the Bible of the industry, but it has a lot of data where people can look into and say, well, this is good data, also for the financial markets, because banks are looking for this data as well for benchmarking, etc. Yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to that, and how very German of you, holding off to have all the answers as well as you can, clean up the dirty data and get the insights out. Thank you so much. We always value your guidance, and I'm sure our listeners will love hearing what's happening in Europe, so thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.